Hello and welcome to the AI Week in Review. Today is Saturday, November the 4th, and the big news this week was on Monday. The executive order came out on safe, secure, and trustworthy development and use of artificial intelligence. So let's just take a look at that order here online. And it turns out that the text of this is really more of a set of mandates to go do this and go do that, rather than specific mandates about what to do. For example, if we were to do a search for the word within, you can see that I get 104 results. So this is a result that's not pertinent, but here we start going. Within 270 days of the date of the order, do this. Within 270 days of the date of the order, do that. Within 90 days, do this. Within 90 days, do that. Within 180 days, do this. You get the idea. So if you're the boss, you get to do this. You just tell people that within a certain number of days you have all these things to do. Make a report, have a meeting, come back with a point of view, and that is what this whole document is like, I can tell you. So with that having been said, let's focus in on an interesting subset of this document, which is this section here, where it says that any model that was trained using a quantity of computing power greater than 10 to the 26th power integer or floating point operations, these types of models have to be require compliance with reporting requirements. Okay. So that having been said, let's just focus on that statement. A quantity of computing power greater than 10 to the 26th power integer or floating point operations. Well, what is that? How much is that? Well, 10 to the 26th power, that's 1 followed by 26 zeros. Looks like that. Integer or floating point operations. That seems like a lot of integer or floating point operations. By the way, what is an integer or floating point operation? And why are they used? So, is this the standard of measure? Well, this part does make sense. So integer or floating point operations are universal measure. They're hardware agnostic. They are applicable to AI. They are related to performance benchmarking. And in fact, we're going to see later in the executive order references. The president doesn't use the abbreviation FLOPS. But, floating point operations per second are referenced indirectly. And so these are all relevant. Now, of course, it is fair to say that these is not the only measure of performance of hardware. So there are other factors like memory bandwidth, latency, system architecture. Fair enough. But it's a universal measure. It's okay. That part is okay. So, now, the question is, how many of these kinds of models might have been built in the world? How many data centers or supercomputers have computer power greater than 10 to the 26th integer or floating point operations? Well, to get a first read on that, let's ask none other than our pal, ChatGPT, what he thinks the answer to this might be. Here I am putting in a question: how many places in the United States is there a quantity of computing power for training AI models greater than 10 to the 26th power integer or floating point operations? And ChatGPT is basically saying, I don't know. I've never heard of such a case. In fact, it's kind of saying there in the bottom box that it doesn't even think that it itself was trained on such a powerful computer as that. And it ought to know. So, yeah, ChatGPT can't think of any such instances. Of course, we know that this version was last updated a couple, in I think 2021, was it? So, it could be missing a little bit of information. But it does beg the question, why then is it specifically greater than 10 to the 26th power integer or floating point operations as the standard, above which we have to be involved in these reporting requirements and so forth? Why not 10 to the 27th power? Why not 10 to the 25th power? Why specifically 10 to the 26th power? And I searched and searched online for any reference to that standard, and I assure you I can find none. I cannot find any reference to that in any previous law, in any previous executive order. It seemed to come completely out of the blue. So why exactly is it 10 to the 26th? I have absolutely no idea where that came from. So anyway, let's move on from this and take our attention now on the second part of that section that we highlighted, shall we, which is part 2. Any computing cluster that has a set of machines physically co-located in a single data center, transitively connected by data center networking, over 100 gigabit per second. Well, let's pull that out. Networking over 100 gigabit per second and having a theoretical maximum computer capacity. Okay. So, once again, what on earth is gBit/s? So what are those? Of course, 1 gigabit per second is 1 billion bits per second. And recalling, as you can see on screen here, 1 byte, which is kind of like what we normally hear people talking in bytes rather than bits. 1 byte is 8 bits. You remember that? So 1 byte is 8 bits. So 1 gigabit per second is like saying 125 megabytes per second. Easier way for us to think about it, you and I. Okay, so it's 125 megabytes per second. So therefore, 100 gbits is 12,500 megabytes per second. So, is that a thing? Can we find instances of that? Yes. I searched for that and I found, for example, this announcement, which is not even that recent, is from 2021, from AWS, and they're saying, yep, we just rolled out native 100 gbits per second. Okay, so it's a thing. It is out there. Okay, no worries there. But do you recall the important word in this executive order, and? It was not an or condition, it was an and condition. Networking over 100 gigabits per second and having a maximum theoretical computing capacity of 10 to the 20 flops. I use the word flops because that's the abbreviation for what it says. 10 to the 20th power flops for training AI. Okay. So let's go in search, shall we, of a computer that has 10 to the 20th power flops capability. And one place we might look would be in the top 500 supercomputers list in the world. It's called the Top 500 list. Here you can see about it in Wikipedia. The Top 500 project ranks and details the 500 most powerful blah, 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 blah. All about the history of it, who started it, who are the key people. Okay, good to know, good to know. And by the way, this very interesting article, which I recommend that you read, it talks about the trend. You can see, the trends for, growth in combined performance. The fastest supercomputer, L9 is the last 500th place supercomputer on the list. And you can see it's growing, nicely. Okay, good, good, good. And, of course, you can break that down by geography. And United States, yay! Many such supercomputers on the list. And then it goes down to China, which has many. China, really. Watch China. And then, down from there, Germany, Japan, France, etc. Cool. So that's the geo. Now, here comes the question. Why did we get on this page? Because we wanted to see, what is the top as of the information that we can tell publicly, given that we're not, connected to the, Department of Defense or whatever. We're just looking at public information. Based upon public information, what we can find is this little rascal here. Number 1. Numero uno. Esta posición. The Frontier computer, the HPA Cray EX235A model. Okay, number 1. And you can see it's got, in terms of petaflops, 1,194 is one of the dimensions. It seems like that's the max. And then there's other thing called the peak. So it's probably a sustainable max and then a peak. But let's just be, aggressive here and take that bigger number. The 1,679, if we were to round it, 1,680. Anyway, let's use 1,679 petaflops, shall we? So, how are we going to convert 1,679 p-flops to flops? How should we do that? Well, 1 p-flop is equal to 10 to the 15th power flops. That's good to know. And so therefore, if we've got 1,679 of those rascals, that 1,679 is equal to 1.679 times 10 to the 3rd power. Okay, mathematics, yay. So the Frontier is running 1.679 times 10 to the 3rd power times 10 to the 15th power, or 1.679 times 10 to the 18th power flops. But wasn't the standard higher than that? It says, and having a theoretical maximum computing capacity of 10 to the 20 flops. In other words, the standard in this executive order appears to be, from what you and I, normal humans can tell, is higher than the biggest supercomputer in the world. And that isn't all, because later, or in another part of the executive order, it exceeds even 10 to the 20. Here you can see a reference to if it requires a quantity of computing power greater than 10 to the 26th power. And please remember that we were talking just now about what apparently, according to this Wikipedia page, is the number 1 supercomputer in the world. And by the way, if you take a look at number 2, you see how fast it falls off? From, 1194 to 442. And I can tell you that as you scroll further down the list, it drops off very fast from there. So, what is the executive writer of the executive order thinking? It doesn't seem like there's such a computer that would be required to be reporting, according to this executive order, in the world, anywhere. Well, maybe it's kind of consistent with the ideas of Wayne Gretzky, I skate to where the puck is going to be, not where it's been. Maybe that's the idea here. I don't know. But one thing that we can say is, in fairness, you and I, normal human beings, don't really know actually what the biggest supercomputer is in the world. Here's a further down in the Wikipedia page where it talks about large machines not on the list, and the blue waters, and there's a famous example from China where they kind of withheld it because they didn't want to provoke the US. And so maybe there are supercomputers today that do exceed this standard. I don't know. But anyway, I thought it would be pretty interesting to share that, and it'll be pretty interesting to see, as that order unveils itself, with all those assignments that have been given to all the busy people that will have to be chasing around doing the within X number of days, how this all turns out. But for you and me, I don't think we're going to have to be worrying anytime soon about our supercomputers or personal computers being monitored. At least for now. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. That was the Week in Review. Thank you very much, and talk to you soon. Bye for now.